Okay, I'm going to get started. Molly, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yep.
Okay, we had some technical difficulties just before the presentation that forced me to transfer over to my telephone to make this all happen. So, welcome everybody. This is the third meeting of the Upper Delaware River Watershed Program. It's the steering committee and technical advisory committee. Thank you for committing your time today. I'm going to go over, because we have some new faces, and we also, I think it's worthwhile providing a little bit more in-depth history here, how we got here. I'm going to go through a bunch of slides as quickly as I can, and then we're going to do introductions, and then we're going to jump into the exercise of the day, which we are calling SWOT, Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities, and Threats, and we'll tell you how that all works when we get there. So with that, if I'm assuming everybody can see the PowerPoint and can hear me, because I'm just going to keep talking and interrupt if that's not the case. Feel free to use the chat box as well, but we need to preserve as much time, so I'm going to move pretty quickly through these slides. Go ahead, Jillian, you can go to the, so let's talk a little bit about how we got here, so everybody kind of is on the same page here. We got to reach back a few years here. In 2017, the federal government approved something called the Delaware River Basin Conservation Act, and that created a fund at the federal level that has since invested close to $4 million plus in the upper Delaware region in New York. It funds the entire Delaware River, but we're, of course, interested in our neck of the woods, which is the state of New York and the upper Delaware River watershed. One of the tricky things about that program is it requires a one-to-one match. That's been challenging for us and continues to be challenging for us. So if we ask for $200,000 for a project, we got to go find $200,000 in cash or in kind. We're working on that, changes on that at the federal level, but that's how it stands right now. A year later, the William Penn Foundation, which is a big supporter of nonprofit conservation groups up and down the Delaware River, decided to make its first investment in Friends of the Upper Delaware River. We had been talking to them for quite some time, and we finally kind of broke through with them. And I think the pivotal piece was, with the federal funding, they were interested in to see if we could generate any funding out of the state of New York, because they thought the federal investment was now, they were doing their share, and it was time for the New York State to take a look at the Upper Delaware River, which, as you can see in point number 3, had not happened that much. We've been told by DEC folks up in Albany that before all this came together, the Upper Delaware River in New York was one of 2 or 3 New York State watersheds that really didn't have any serious dedicated state level funding. And all of you are familiar with the state of New York and all of its water resources. So historically, the Upper Delaware, as important as we know it to be, was under-recognized for a long time at the state level. That has now started to change. In 2020, we started organizing coalitions, which is one thing that we believe is absolutely critical if you're going to try to pry funding out of tight budgets at any level. We formed the Alliance for the Upper Delaware River Watershed, of which there's a number of members on this call to get ourselves organized. And in 2022 and 2023, we broke through again, this time at the state level. So the New York State Environmental Protection Fund is now, I think, a $4 billion pot that funds environmental work, conservation work across the state of New York. And we were able to break in and get a line item in the EPF, Environmental Protection Fund, of $300,000 for the Upper Delaware, specifically for the Upper Delaware. And when I say the Upper Delaware, let's be clear, we're talking about the whole thing in New York. We're talking about the headwaters areas, the northern sections up in the Catskills, often referred to as the New York City watershed, and everything below it all the way to Port Jervis. And that funding, that was 2 years ago. And in last year's budget cycle, we got a little bit of a bump. We're up to 350. And we hopefully expect that we will continue to be funded by the state of New York, as long as we continue to do the good work that this group is assembled to do. So Jillian, if you could go to the next slide.
Hey, Jeff, if I could just interrupt for a second. A few of you, I'm sending messages to figure out the steering committee placement. So if you could just keep an eye on your messages if you didn't RSVP. Some of you I have a pretty good sense of where you'd like to be, and some of you I don't. So thanks.
Okay, thanks, Molly. So what are our, what do we have to, what are the goods we have to deliver here with the state funding from the first year? That's the 2022, 2023. We needed to form a steering committee and advisory committee. Obviously, we've done that. That's who you folks are. It's our third meeting. We work closely contractually, actually, with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. And we are in touch with them all the time. They provide guidance on what we're up to with watershed planning. We also have to put together something called an action agenda, which is a document that's sort of the backbone of everything we're doing here. And we're doing, I'll talk a little bit about more in detail in a second about that. And that is in collaboration, of course, with the DEC and with this group that's on the phone today. And we have to develop a re-grant program. With a good portion of this funding is available to go back out the door for actual on the ground projects. That's the whole game here, is to get, on the ground projects funded that improve conditions in the Upper Delaware River watershed. And we also, the state legislature and the governor's office was also interested in seeing us do things. And so that first year of funding, that first round of funding, also dedicated an investment in the implementation of 3 on-the-ground projects, which I will also talk about in just a second. Okay, Jillian, you can keep going here. What is the action agenda? It's going to let many of you have been part of watershed planning processes before. You've seen things like this. It kind of is the guidance document for everything we're going to do. We're in the middle of putting that draft. We have a draft out. Some of you have seen that, commented on it. It lays out the goals and objectives of the programs. It's kind of a blueprint for moving forward on how we implement our watershed plan. It has to be approved by you folks, so that will be coming at some point soon. And the New York State DEC, this is a critical piece here. The DEC acceptance of this plan is a big deal. And it will help make everything we do, and I say we, I mean the collective we, everybody on this phone that's involved in any way in watershed protection in the Upper Delaware and New York, just a little bit more competitive when it comes to funding resources. So the other thing that came up on the last call that we want to be really clear with, point number 3 here, we recognize that there's, and we're part of, other watershed, sub-watershed planning efforts that have been going on historically. We talked about the Upper East Branch up in New York City watershed that I know Larry and your group is so close with. We're actually involved with the Neversink planning process right now, right in the middle of it. So there's plans out there. We recognize them. We're going to have to figure out how we incorporate those into this larger watershed effort. Okay, Jillian, go on. The pieces of the action agenda and the roadmap to getting it done. I mentioned already the steering and advisory committees are formed. The draft is out there. You folks have seen it. Today is number 3, the SWOT analysis, and we're going to explain what that means in just a minute here. And then we also, the big substantive part of the action agenda is, okay, what are the projects? What are we actually going to be doing on the ground? Because that's where everything really matters, right? That's where our deliverables shine at that point. And for us to demonstrate that we're doing good things with the funding, we have to identify projects and actually do them. So we'll be so the drafting of the action agenda will include mapping, and we're probably also going to call on some of you to help us out with some of the topics. We're not experts on everything, so we're going to need some help with some work groups probably. Then we are committed to and obligated to 2 in-person meetings to discuss it, a virtual public meeting that's followed by a 30-day public comment period. This is a formal kind of thing, not as super formal as a public hearing, but it's something that has to be done, within sort of the context of the state government, DEC, and in order for them to kind of accept what we're doing here, this 30-day public comment period has to happen. Then we would come back together again, and this group again to take a look at the public comment, incorporate that as necessary into the action agenda, and have this group approve it, and that's when we would send it to DEC for acceptance. All of this we hope to get done by April 1st, so it's a very ambitious schedule.
Ooh.
And again, we thank you for all of your assistance. We're gonna need it. Okay, Jillian, you can move on. Let's see. These are the 3 projects that were selected to be completed in the first round of funding. So the fiscal years, by the way, 2022, 23, that's the first year, 23, 24 is the second year. That's how the state budget identifies its fiscal year. It's always sort of a year ahead. The Highland Access, many of you were at a press conference that we hosted way down on the main stem of the Delaware and kind of Highland, where in conjunction with Sullivan County and others, we featured a new boat launch down there. We had the congressman there, and we had the state assemblywoman there, both of whom are champions of this program. And there was maybe 50 people there or 60 people. It was a really good event. Some of you have been to the Little Beaver Kill, and there's pictures here in just a second we're going to get to that you can see. This is Livingston Manor, and the Trout Unlimited and as well as the Mongop Trout Unlimited. Tracy Brown is on the call, very much neck deep in all of this stuff, along with FUDR. Those are the 3 projects that we committed to in the first round of funding. And then Jillian, there's a series of pictures coming up here that you can, there's Highland Access. And I think that's a before after. And Tracy, if you're on the line here, is that a before after? I'm having a hard time seeing that of the Little Beaver Kill.
It is.
Yeah,
Yes.
you can see the water line on the left photo. And we installed a grade control structure downstream to backwater, and through time it will collect sediment and cover the water line to protect it.
Great, thank you, Tracy.
You bet.
And we'll keep going here. So these are just examples and to give you some visuals on the kind of work that our program and our action agenda is going to identify and prioritize and go find funding for. We hope to, this is sort of the result that is in some ways the most important outcome here. So we're happy to have these 3 projects, I think, completed, and get that under our belt, and we can point this thing, the accomplishments that will help us continue to build support for the program in lots of different ways. So Jillian, the roles and responsibilities, let's be clear here about what the difference is between the steering committee and advisory committee. And you can see it right there. The steering committee is, it's 1 representative from each municipality in the watershed, and that is town and village and regional nonprofits. These are going to be the voting members of the steering committee. The advisory committee, of which we have a number of folks on the phone, are sort of the technical experts that work in partnership with or conjunction with or work for some of the agencies within the municipalities, but it's also we have folks from the federal level, state level, and local level who are helping us navigate our way through this comprehensive and very ambitious watershed planning effort. We're going to meet monthly, last Tuesday of each month, although I think that's adjusted next month because FUDR has our annual conference, so I think we might have to switch that up. Sherry might be walking us through that later in the call. And we also have to put together some formal bylaws to help us function and operate. So what's next here? At this point, I'm going to stop and I'm going to do introductions. And this is very hard for me because I can't see anybody here on my phone. But the way this should work is I will introduce myself and then I'll hand it off to somebody else and they will introduce themselves and so on and so forth. So remember, you got to hand it off to somebody till we get to the end of the line. So I'm Jeff Skelding. I think I know most of you. I'm Executive Director of Friends of the Upper Delaware River up here in Hancock, New York. And I am going to hand it over to Sherry.
Hi, everybody. Sherry Rusty Thomas, Friends of the Upper Delaware River, and I'm going to hand it off to Jillian.
Hello, everybody. I am Jillian Pagnotti. I am FUDR's watershed program coordinator. I focus a lot on the Neversink watershed. So that might be how you know me from. I will pass this off to Kylie.
Hello, I'm Kylie Romanowski. I'm with Friends of the Upper Delaware River. I'm the grants coordinator here. I'm going to pass it off to Molly.
Hi, everyone. Molly Oliver from Friends of the Upper Delaware River, and I'm going to hand it off to Clay.
Hi, I'm Clay Smith. I'm on the board of Friends of the Upper Delaware River, and I am by profession a nonprofit consultant. And who should I pass it to? Just anyone? I'll pass it to Tracy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy Brown with Trout Unlimited. I'm the restoration manager. And I saw Tom Carroll, who's also with TU, so I will pass it off to him.
Thanks, Tracy. This is Tom Carroll. I'm also with Trout Unlimited, New York State Council Conservation Committee. I will pick Chris Van Maren.
Hi, Chris Van Maren, the Regional Fisheries Manager for the DEC for Region 4. And I will pass it off to Bill Reiber.
Bill Reber, Town of Thompson Supervisor in Monticello. So then I'll pick somebody. Beth Brown.
I'm with the Delaware River Basin Commission. I'm our Director of External Affairs and Communications. Thanks for having me be part of it. And I'll pass it to, oh boy, now I have to pay attention to who's already. Morgan, did you go yet?
No, I did not. I'm Morgan Tarble. I'm with the New York State Department of Health and the Bureau of Water Supply Protection. I'm a research scientist. I primarily deal with the New York City watershed in the FAD, and my background actually is in ecosystem science. I'm familiar with the New York City watershed, also the Great Lakes, very extensively. So happy to be here. Thank you. And I will pass it off to Pat Palmer.
Thanks, Morgan. Hi, Pat Palmer, State Health Department. I'm the chief of the New York City Watershed Section. Let's go to Meg.
Yes, my name is Meg McGuire. I run a website called Delaware Currents. I'm here just to keep abreast of all the exciting things that are happening in the Upper Delaware. I'm going to pass it off to Jennifer Garigliano.
Hi everyone, I'm Jen Grigliano. I'm the Director for Water Resources Management at the Bureau of Water Supply for New York City DEP. Ryan, did you go yet?
I have not gone yet, Jen. Ryan Coulter, New York State DEC Fisheries Unit. Our region kind of covers from Long Eddy all the way down to Port Jervis. Let me scroll through here. Oh, I see Lori. Hey, Lori, you're next.
Thanks, Ryan. Lori Ramey, Executive Director of the Upper Delaware Council. I'll pass it to Heather Jaxie.
Heather Jaxie, Chief Planner for Sullivan County, New York. I'll pass it to Helen Polanco.
Hi, I'm Helen Polanco from Division of Water DEC Central Office. I'm a brand new research scientist for the Lake Champlain program, and essentially I'm here learning about UDR and all the watershed planning that's going on. So thanks for having me on. Oh, that's right. I have to pass it to somebody. And hopefully I remember everyone's faces. I think Morgan already went. Did D. Hamilton go?
No. Don Hamilton, Natural Resources Program Manager for the National Park Service on the Upper Delaware River. And I'm going to pass it to Lindsay Kernath.
Thanks, Don. Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay Kernath. I'm the superintendent of the Upper Delaware Scenic and Recreational River. Did I see Andy Weber? You on there? Want to go next?
I'm here. Hi, everyone. Andy Weber, ecologist with the Upper Delaware Scenic and Recreational River. And I guess I'll pick on Tanya Dabke again.
Thanks, Sandy. Hi, I'm Tanya Dapke. I work at the Academy of Natural Sciences in the macroinvertebrate lab. I'm the section lead, and I will pass it to, oh boy, Dan Brown. Have you gone yet?
Haven't gone yet. Thank you. Dan Brown, I'm a program manager with the Core Network, a National Association of Service and Conservation Corps, and working with the Upper Delaware River Conservation Corps with FUDR. I will pass it off to Jerry. Have you gone, Jerry Bernal?
No, I haven't. Jerry Bernal, Town Hancock Supervisor. And I'll pass it off here to my sidekick, Pat.
Pat O'Brien, I'm with the town of Hancock. And I'll pass it off to anybody that hasn't gone yet.
That's cheating.
I think we have everyone.
Hi, this is Timothy Leonard. I'm with National Parks Conservation Association's Northeast Office.
This is Brennan Terrier, New York State DEC. I'm also in the Division of Water, like health.
I'm Kaylin Hubbard. I'm a land protection coordinator at Delaware Highlands Conservancy. We work in Pike and Wayne counties, Pennsylvania, and Delaware and Sullivan counties in New York.
This is Brent Coach. I'm with New York City DEP, Technical Advisor for Reservoir Releases.
Christina Ryder, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm our program manager for our Delaware River Basin Restoration Program, which spans all 4 states in the watershed.
Is there anyone that
anyone else? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Anybody that didn't get to introduce themselves, just chime in. Everybody went. Great.
Okay, I got just one more slide to kind of sum up what we're trying to get done today, but I just want to say, I mean, that lengthy list of introductions, it strikes me, and we have an awesome team here, and we can't thank you enough for, I know many of you, I know how busy you are. So for you to dedicate your time and energy to this process means a lot to us. And we are very, very thankful and look forward to working with all of you. So my last slide here is we're trying to capture what we're trying to get done today in the remaining hour and a half here. Many of you have been through this SWOT analysis, and Clay's going to talk about it more in a second, but we sort of were joking around. It's a little bit weird to think of the strengths and weaknesses of a watershed. Often we do these in conjunction with organizations, but we think we have figured out a way to make it all work here and make it sense for everybody, and put your thinking caps on today and really sort of ferret out some of the more detailed elements of our watershed and what's good and what needs work and where we're strong and those sort of things. The second piece would, just tied in with that is threats and opportunities. All of us talk about these things all the time. So we hope that when you break out into your groups here, you'll be able to come up with a good list of, detailed observations about your experience, where you live, what you think is going on in the watershed. And then all of this is kind of congeal in a collective vision, because that's what a watershed plan has to be. It has to be diverse stakeholders with different expertise and different viewpoints coming together and agreeing, okay, here's a roadmap for the future. So this is all not going to happen today, but this is a piece of the building process. So with that, you briefly met Clay Smith just a moment ago. Clay has been a loyal and dedicated FUDR board member for a number of years now. And as he said, in his professional life, he is a nonprofit consultant and has helped us at least 3 times, maybe more, at an organizational level, get through things like strategic planning and organizing community thinking around the river. And Clay has stood in front of 3 or 4 large groups and done some great work to kind of get everybody kind of thinking in the same direction and coming together around ideas and visions for the future of the Upper Delaware River watershed. So thank you, Clay, for doing all that, and thank you for agreeing to do it again here. So Clay, do you want to jump in here and kind of tell everybody where we're all heading here over the next hour and a half?
Yes, that sounds great. Thanks for the introduction, Jeff. I'm really excited to be here with you all and support this important project that you all are digging into. So as Jeff said, a lot of you have probably heard of and done SWOT analysis before. And we do have, and it's often a tool to help an organization sort of assess its position and how it wants to move forward. And so it's usually an assessment of the organization. And here we're doing something a little bit different, which is assessing the watershed and sort of what the strengths and weaknesses are and opportunities and threats of that. We sort of fleshed out a slightly more clear version of what we mean by each of those here. So by strengths, we mean the current strengths of the watershed. By weaknesses, we mean the current weaknesses of the watershed. And then by opportunities, we mean the future opportunities for protecting and enhancing the watershed. And by threats, we mean the future threats to the watershed. So we sort of are shifting the framework a little bit, but in a way that will hopefully make it a little smoother for us. So just to, this is sort of the typical SWOT grid. And the way that we're doing it, the strengths are the current favorable conditions. The weaknesses are the current unfavorable conditions. And the threats are the unfavorable future trends and conditions. And the opportunities are the favorable future trends and conditions. That was a little bit of a tongue twister somehow for me. But that's sort of the classic grid and a little bit how we've adopted it. We're also gonna break our group down since we have a nice big good sized group, and there's we're going to break down into 4 main categories of analysis. So we're going to have one group that's really going to focus on the SWOT of the habitat, one that's going to focus on water quality and the elements of the SWOT for that topic. One will do flooding and another will do recreation. And I know we sent out a little questionnaire about which one you want to participate in. And the staff has been doing a really good job working that out. So hopefully you're in one of your top 2 choices when we break into the small groups shortly. And I think if we can switch from this slide to the spreadsheet, I'll show you the spreadsheet where we're actually going to do all of our work. And this will make it a little bit easier to follow, I think, probably than what I just said. Is somebody able to do that? There it is. Okay, so we have this spreadsheet that we're going to fill out in the small groups. And you can see at the bottom, there's tabs for each of the topics. You won't have to worry about that. Your facilitator will help you with that. But maybe we can go to the water quality tab. And we just put a sample goal in here. Can we make it a little bit bigger? It's a little hard to see for me. I don't know if it is for other people. These things always need a little adjustment. Thank you. So we have in column A, here's your topic. This is the water quality group. And then it has current strengths of the watershed. And we put just like a sample answer in there. And the group that is really going to work on this can cancel that or leave it there. But just as a sample, a current strength of the watershed might be that the New York Watershed Program protects water quality and provides clean water to millions. That's a unique kind of thing, that New York City Watershed Program. So that's a strength. And then we can scroll down a bit. And what's a weakness? A weakness is that outside of the New York City watershed, there's a lack of data on water quality. So we're like missing information. So that's sort of a weakness that we have. Future threats so that's sort of the present. Those first 2 are the present, the current state. And the next 2 are sort of what does the future hold? So one potential future threat to the watershed is increasing unplanned development that there's no plan for, and it's just rolling out all over the place. A future opportunity for protecting and enhancing the watershed is to plan proactively to maintain and improve water quality. Looking at places where there's actually no planning going on and how can we get a plan in place. So those are some examples of the types of things that we'll put in each of these sections. And then you'll see a bit to the right, the columns B, C, and D. This is sort of an optional thing, but some of the things that we identify might be more relevant to the New York City part of the watershed. And if they are, you can check that box. And if they're relevant more to the parts that are not the New York City relevant, not the New York City section of the watershed, you can mark that. And if it's for all of it, you can mark that. And like I said, there's also like a lot of other sort of fault lines where you might fall on one side or the other, and you can explore those as you come up with one. But that was one that we thought had some significance in all of this. And then there's one other thing, which is the last tab is miscellaneous. So if in your group you come up with something that feels really interesting, but it doesn't really fit in your group or any of the other groups, you can plop it down over in this sort of catch-all section for anything else that comes up. Does that sound good? Or are there any questions about this format? And you'll have a facilitator, so they can probably answer the questions too. But can I get like a thumbs up? Does it seem all right? Seem clear? All right. So let us go back to the slides for a minute. And if we can. Yes, this is the one. Guidelines for our small group work. So as I said, there'll be a facilitator and also a note taker in each room. And we ask that you really follow the lead of your facilitator and give everyone in your group a chance to talk. Be curious and respectful. Don't make assumptions, speak from your experience, and you all have a huge amount of experience, so that will serve you very well. And that we have roughly 10 minutes for each of the sections. So you can spend 10 minutes on the strengths, 10 minutes on the weaknesses, et cetera, et cetera. And there may be divisive issues that come into the discussion. And when that happens, we ask not for like more polarization, but for more open thinking about the positive and negative attributes of the issues that arise. So just really trying to be open to difference and work with that in a way that generates good ideas. And so we have up to 40 minutes if we need for this. And then we'll come back together and we'll get a brief report back from each of the facilitators on what came up in their group. And then we'll sort of open up the discussion. Does that sound good? Or are there any questions from anyone? All right, and I'll be bopping around from group to group. So if you have any questions, you can also ask me when I stop in your group. And I think we are ready to break into groups. And if you haven't done Zoom breakout groups before, in a minute, you will just get a little invitation that pops up that says, please join room 3. And that's the room you've been assigned to. And you can just click yes or whatever it is, and you will find yourself with your small group.
And it's just going to take Sherry and I 2 or 3 minutes to send people to their rooms. So
good.
Go to bed.
And if anyone has a song they'd like to sing to fill the space, that would be wonderful.
So is Kylie out there? She messaged me. I'm not sure I messaged her back. She can put me in the group that she wanted to.
Thank you.
Habitat, recreation, water quality, etc.
They're all good groups, good topics.
Yeah. Apparently, it looks like she's not getting my message. So I have no idea what I'm doing. So anyway.
While we're waiting, I'll quickly say that these topics or rooms or groups, whatever you want to call them, are not randomly selected by us. They kind of match some of the priorities in the federal program. And Christina Ryder's on the call. Thank you for being here today, Christina. The state funding that was provided by the legislature and the governor to us actually specifically mentions the federal Delaware River program and says, this money is being provided to you in part to implement the federal program. So a lot of the stuff we're doing here has some mirror effect from the elements of the federal program, and these categories are one of them.
Nice. Any other questions or comments as we wait for another minute or two? As the magic is happening behind the scenes?
Yeah, I guess just from a procedural question, I'm sorry if I missed this before, but for steering committee folks or advisory committee folks, are you tracking our time as in-kind match? And if so, do you want us to be giving you any sort of documentation on that?
Good question, Beth. I think that might be a Molly Sherry question.
Cool.
And let's see if they chime in here. I know they're
Otherwise
at the
occupied.
moment.
Getting us into beautiful groups. Anything else? Any other tips or suggestions for doing this thing from people that have done a lot of SWOT analyses? I know we have a lot of experience on this call. And one other thing I'll say, that people are welcome to, not share their screen, but if you're willing, we'd love to see your face, especially in the small group, so we can feel a little bit more connection. But it's certainly fine to keep them off if that's your preference. And people have some nice walls behind them also. That's always interesting.
You like that picture?
What is that picture?
That's a barn down on 17B somewhere. Jerry Cohen took that picture.
Hmm,
And it's on acrylic.
very
Pretty.
nice.
Yeah. I do have one of the beaver kill
Nice.
on the other wall too.
It looks like we have our invites, so we'll see you in the small rooms.
Clay,
Yeah.
I think because I'm the host, I don't know how to get into my own room.
Oh,
What I do?
I think what you do, let me see here.
Kylie, do you see the option to get into your room?
So
Kylie?
when you if you go to breakout rooms, then you should just be able to pick which one you want to go into, I think.
But breakout rooms, let me try. For me, it's just
Yes.
I see. So I can pick whatever one I want.
Yeah, you see it says join at the
Oh,
top of the
okay,
group.
yes. Okay, I'm out of here.
Okay.
All right, Sherry, you're good to get in your room? We can't hear you. You're muted. Can you get into your room okay, Sherry?
I can stay with
Okay, yes,
Sharon.
okay. See ya.
She's in. Okay. Which one are you going to? Oh, good. Just go.
Clay, we finished just in the nick of time.
Good job. Looks like you did good work.
It was a great discussion.
Good.
Hi, Meg. Virtual hugs.
So I think people should be coming back.
Yeah, it gave us
not.
the option, when the timer ran out, it actually gave us an option that we had 120 bonus seconds.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow,
I think
that's
I
really
might have
generous.
I thought it was going to give a 120-second warning that it was going to
Yeah.
end. I didn't realize I
Yep.
was adding a bonus 100.
That may be a new feature.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for your great work. It was amazing to watch that spreadsheet sort of come to life. Looks like a lot of good stuff you all did. Looks like people are still coming back. I thought that was everyone. Maybe this is everyone. Okay, so we're going to move into hearing some report backs from each group, and would like each of the facilitators to take 5 minutes just to share some of the highlights of your group's discussion. And I want to ask the rest of us to really listen carefully and sort of listen for important themes or important points that we should really bring our focus to in the future. And also make note of any questions you have. And maybe we'll have time to share all of those at the end, but otherwise we'll ask you to like put them in the chat or something so that we can address them later. So let us start with the habitat group. I think, Tracy, you were the facilitator for that. Do you want to share what your group discussed?
Yes, sorry, I lost track of you. Molly, do I have the spreadsheet? Oh, yes, I do.
I was
Okay.
gonna say, do you want me to just put the spreadsheet up and swap
Yeah,
it?
I think that would
so
be
it's
helpful.
people-
I think
okay.
so.
That would be good for all the groups, probably.
Yeah, for all the groups, I can leave it up.
So the truth be told, Molly was really the facilitator on ours, but I will go through the summary. So from a habitat perspective, we first started to talk about what habitat we were actually assessing, and we landed at aquatic and riparian habitat. And from a current strikes perspective, I think the group felt like we had good diversity of habitat, cold water, headwaters down all the way down to warm water. So that would include the species associated. Up in the upper watersheds, large tracts of undeveloped land was definitely leading and helping with this idea of healthy habitats, strong communication between partners, high species diversity and water quality, engaged stakeholders, a natural beauty throughout the watershed, which kind of led to that idea of engagement and participation in recreation, strong congressional champions, proximity to New York City for that kind of engagement and focus and appreciation. And then from a weakness perspective, definitely the idea of invasive species, the potential for development and how that might impact the riparian community and lead to warming waters, sedimentation, the possibility of road infrastructure being inadequate and being a barrier to aquatic passage, as well as both small and large dams impacting potential flows and temperature. And then other types of pollution, salts, microplastics. And I think overall weakness is state funding to do habitat work. And then from a future threats perspective, definitely the idea of development coming into the watershed, climate change and the impacts caused by flooding, ice, warming waters, again, the threat of emerging contaminants, failing septics, and then future opportunities. We kind of talked about the work that's going on with culvert assessments and working with the towns to address failing infrastructure and reduce some of those aquatic barriers. The opportunity for groups to reach out to colleges and get students engaged, more education possibilities, the trout management plan that has a focus on habitat improvements, the ideas of and opportunities to identify thermal refuge for aquatic species to combat the climate change. And I think that pretty much sums it up. So that's us from Habitat.
Thank you so much, Tracy and Molly. So let us go to water quality. And Christina Ryder, can you give us a summary of what you all came up with?
Sorry about that. We had a great group of folks, really diverse representation from a lot of different organizations. So that was helpful to get those varying perspectives. There were some great strengths that I helped to identify, the percent of land cover in the upper basin with forested habitat that's a big plus for us. Indicating that we have the Delaware River Basin Commission as kind of like an organizing group to help kind of work within the states and across jurisdictions to implement water quality and other policy that helps to improve the habitat of the river. We also have non-regulatory programs such as, the Delaware Watershed Conservation Fund to help fund the implementation work, some of that habitat work that Tracy talked about. One of our folks indicated that we have native freshwater mussels and migratory fish resources throughout the watershed that really kind of those indicators, sentinel species that help us really cue in on, their habitat needs. We talked a little bit about New York City having that watershed program that helps to protect, outside of the city proper, add layers of protection in the upper watershed so that they don't have to filter the water to keep that water quality component really high in those waters as it comes to the millions of people that depend on it for drinking water. Another strength is having someone like the Academy of Natural Sciences who is maintaining a lot of the biological data, things like macroinvertebrate presence, absence, diversity, algal species, that kind of biological core that helps us understand what the health and resilience of the different water bodies, headwaters, tributaries, others within the system. So those were a lot of the strengths. Weaknesses that we discussed was data sharing across partners, not always knowing who's collecting what data and then not being able to access that data or sharing it appropriately. A lot of folks indicated a need to use that for planning and prioritization purposes and not being able to access it. Another weakness was that the thought that USGS has a lot of water quality probes and instrumentation across the watershed, and that these probes may not always collect the robust amount of data that we need for decision making, policy setting, those types of things. So maybe thinking about how we can work with USGS and better instrument those probes so that they collect all the different data parameters that we need. Outside of New York City watershed, there's a lack of data on water quality. I think it's hit and miss in the systems, depending where you have capacity to collect that data and then retain that data. And then, this was pointed as a weakness, but, having a diverse set of stakeholders across the watershed, but with competing objectives and interests. So it can be hard to kind of facilitate and coalesce that. So that were some of our weaknesses. Future threats to the watershed, increased unplanned development, climate change, invasive species, habitat loss, road salt application, microplastics. And then if we all continue to operate in silos, we're not going to be effective as the collective could be. Some future opportunities we talked about for protecting and enhancing the watershed, planning proactively, just like this initiative is trying to do to maintain and improve water quality. Maybe an opportunity is to create some type of central website, data repository to house water quality data and other biological data that could help all of us plan and implement a little more effectively. USGS is currently trying to update their instrumentation throughout the basin. So they're looking for public input. So that seems like an opportunity to maybe get better data parameters or different ones collected. And there's more opportunity for outreach education with the public, really educating them as to the benefits of a healthy watershed so that they can understand and kind of co-create the conservation that needs to happen in their communities and outside. So with that, I will wrap it up for my group.
Thank you very much, Christina. That was great. Let us move to the flooding group with Beth Brown.
Hey, Clay, it's Jeff. Two things. One, I volunteered Beth again to be our reporter here, and we weren't able to access the spreadsheet. So
I'm sorry.
We do have a Word document I just forwarded to Molly and Sherry. Or Beth captured the notes. So Beth, you want to take over from there?
Access to the spreadsheet while good ideas were already flowing. So I just continued to use this Word document, but I just emailed it to Molly and Jeff. Right. So you'll all have it. But let me see if I can share my screen, and I will just highlight out some of the good information that folks were plugging through. I don't know if this is good. but we have a lot of strengths around flooding. That seems counterintuitive. But it seems like, in spite of flooding being obviously a very, costly, damaging, dangerous, and sometimes deadly event, there are some strengths to be identified through this process in terms of both really like hyper local actions, like the first one here that, local towns and municipalities have gotten better about, responding to literal log jams in rivers and streams and getting water flowing again and reducing risk there. It was noted that there's been some really positive interaction with below dam communities in the New York City DEP with regard to mitigation releases and generally the flexible flow management plan. I know there's a lot to unpack in that topic. That there's been some local projects that have resulted from flooding events that have allowed the local community to sort of build back with nature in mind. There was a project in Lordville that was mentioned as a highlight, and just general improved partnership. I think I heard that in some of the other reports out between New York City and some of the upstate communities in the basin specifically. Improved data and forecasting as well as modeling. There's a lot of different entities. Christina mentioned USGS. I didn't mention them specifically here, but you could add them to the list as well. And then just general, there's a lot invested in the New York City system such that there's a lot of data, operational and long-term planning that has benefits when it comes to flooding, even though the New York City reservoirs are not built for flood control. And then at the sort of the county level, the soil and water county districts had put some programs in place several years back that seemed to be, good models to either, continue funding or to resurrect those. And then there's just been additional networking and connections among the various partners here. In terms of weaknesses, obviously in response to specific flooding events, there's always, the risk of loss of life and safety and risks to recreation and the recreation economy. Certainly there are some milestone and sort of, low point floods that 2000 and, the mid-aughts had a series of them. One person specifically called out the 2006 flood. And there are, very specific local problems that arise when there's flooding and repetitive loss or repetitive flooding, instances. So again, a local example from Hancock was mentioned, and sort of linking this to the opportunity and threat that we talked a lot about with climate change is just this idea of, both the weather event and the climate event linked to the built environment, right? And sort of what is existing infrastructure built to handle, what should it be built to handle, and how do we transition that going forward to adapt? Floodplain mapping came up as a weakness in some regards. I guess there's been some impact, some opportunity to update those maps in some communities, but it hasn't been across the board. And then the weakness about development, right? That also came up in other groups, but development, whether it's being done in a floodwise or climate forward sort of manner throughout the upper basin. And then in terms of opportunities, some themes that came out, again, really just, if we're planning with climate change in mind or with future weather realities in mind, even just knowing what the data is showing us about trends, how can we prepare and be ready? How can we tap into resources? And we have opportunity through the Bond Act in New York for capital projects, and potentially even more, opportunities coming through, perhaps projects that come out of a result of this process and more. there was a little bit of discussion about dam removal. I think that's, that's something that's of interest to a lot of groups, and certainly has a growing amount of interest and support. And then in the threats category, really climate was the big one. But then a close second was development pressure and just, poorly planned or, unsustainable development in the region generally. A lot of what's strength in terms of water quality, in terms of other categories, the low impervious surface, the high forested, all of those things, the yin and yang of this is that, when that gets eroded by development, then the other pressures increase, the other threats increase. That's the highlights from our group. Happy to answer any questions, or if anyone sees a big one we forgot to include here.
Thanks a lot, Beth. We're going to move on to the next group because we're getting a little bit close to the end, but thanks for the great work and sorry for the technical glitches. And now we're going to finish up with the recreation group, and Lori Ramey, I hope, can give a report.
Right. We opted, the 6 of us, to take a watershed-wide approach to all of these categories. And that's not only because we forgot to look at those subcategories, but it does help and it did seem appropriate. We started out by defining recreation as the typical pursuits that we're all familiar with in terms of boating, fishing, sightseeing, hunting, and all of that. So the strengths that we discussed were the diversity of activities that can be done in the watershed throughout all 4 seasons, and that they are available to people of all skill levels. You don't need to be an expert. Novices can do any of those activities as well. They are family friendly for the most part. We found in some cases that some of our strengths also are weaknesses or opportunities or threats. So in many cases, these ideas repeat themselves throughout, but basically the calling card of the Upper Delaware River watershed is its beauty and its opportunities and inequalities. We also found that it's accessible to people because it hasn't been overdeveloped yet and it's not outpriced for the market, that there are plenty of free opportunities through game lands and public lands and multiple use facilities, and that the number of conservation organizations that are out there to make sure that these recreational opportunities are protected and available is very impressive here. And basically, the National Park Service presence as well is a cap in our feather in our cap, in order to promote all the public safety, the law enforcement aspect to keep things orderly, and then the public education that they do. The proximity of this area as an escape from the urban environment was something that also is considered a strength, as well as the commercial facilities we have available when people do come here. Weaknesses, one discussion was the maintenance that is required to keep up all these facilities, to be ready for people. We also discussed the lack of cell service or the issues we have with not getting good connections, both for finding out information, for speaking to each other, communicating in general, and then emergency access, that is a problem. We spoke about needing to make sure that people have a proper respect for the environment, for private property rights, and show etiquette as is needed for commingling out there with our resources. We spoke about the invasive species that we have to deal with here. Ticks, for example, are a problem. Not that those are invasive necessarily, but that's something to watch out for. The knotweed that's been proliferating and taking up the river banks. This one crossover issue was that proximity to the urban areas, because people who aren't familiar with the area may not know how to recreate safely or how not to be a hindrance to the watershed in some respect. So that's an issue. We spoke about how signage could be better to direct people properly to these public areas. There's a complaint occasionally that there aren't enough hiking trails or places to go, and that some of them are crowded and rowdy, those sorts of things. So education in general could always be improved. The threats to the watershed were loving the area to death, as they say, when some of the resources are being overused, which we especially experienced during the pandemic when people had nothing else to do. So they found these areas and then they became somewhat overrun at that time. There are emerging invasive species, which we probably haven't even thought of yet, that are hindering recreation. Development, if it's not done in an orderly fashion, can certainly impede on those areas. Climate change is an issue in every one of these categories. We spoke about aging forests, aging infrastructure, the understaffing of agencies that are there to protect the resources and to maintain them, and that as much as property gets bought up along the rivers and in public areas, then it's no longer available to the public through purchases of large tracts of land. And the deer population even has had an impact on the regrowth of forests because they eat everything. Future opportunities, we spoke about the advancing technology is in our favor to some extent to protect and enhance the watershed. That zoning, if it's done intentionally and properly with coordination, can be something that helps overall. That we're lucky to have as many active conservation organizations as we do to protect the rivers and the lands in our area. All of these new federal and state funding opportunities have been a blessing. There's always opportunities for stewardship to be promoted and for all of the groups to work together and sort of pool their resources, and building upon those partnerships is something that should be pursued.
Beautiful. Thank you, Lori and the Recreation Group. So, wow, this was great. You all are an amazing group, and this is an amazing document that we've just created in the last 45 minutes or whatever. And I think we don't have time for a lot of discussion, but I think it would be good just to take a moment for each of us to think about what we have heard just now, and maybe in the chat enter like what are some of the important themes or important questions that you have. And then I know we'll come back to this after some time to really dig into it, and I think someone maybe needs to mute. I'm sorry. So let's just take a moment to ponder that and to put some of your reflections in the chat. Important themes, learnings. And I'll just read some of them as they come up. Important theme, climate change will impact all aspects. We have to be prepared. Everyone is concerned about Sullivan County. Does that mean focusing on Sullivan as opposed to some of the other counties? Good things happen when we talk. Lots of connections between categories, indeed. How interrelated the categories are. Yep, look at that. Our comments are interrelated. Any other brief reflections? Well, thank you for the amazing work you did on that. I think there's really a lot of depth in this document and a lot of stuff that's going to serve you well. And I am going to turn it over to Sherry to talk a little bit about the next steps. And you can keep texting. It's good. People are still putting good stuff in there, or chatting, whatever it's called.
Okay, well, I want to say thank you to Clay for helping us with this. And I want to say thanks to everybody who's on here, because I know 2 hours is a lot of time to dedicate, and we really appreciate you carving out 2 hours for us today. So next steps, we thought it would be a good idea to share this Google Sheet with everyone that couldn't be here today, just so we make sure that we gather all of the information that we possibly can. And we're going to ask for feedback by October 6th. You'll all be included on that. If you think of something that you didn't, wasn't on there, or you forgot to mention, everybody will have access to add comments to the sheet. So, and if you want to share it with anybody, please do. The next step is we are going to meet with the advisory committee, and we're going to review the big issues and ensure they're addressed in the action agenda. And then the next steering committee, we are going to discuss the projects for 2024 implementation. We will have a list of projects that you can review. Our next meeting was scheduled for Tuesday, October 25th, I think it is. But October 24th, as Jeff mentioned, we are holding our Water Everywhere conference that day. We're holding it in person and virtual. If anybody wants to attend, you can register on our website, but we won't be able to have the regularly scheduled meeting for October. We're not sure if we are going to just not meet in October and just push it to the November date that's on everybody's calendars, or if we're going to need to schedule something in October. We will get back to everyone on that very soon. And that concludes our meeting for today, unless Jeff or Molly or anyone else has anything that they would like to chat about before we all leave.
I don't have anything. Thanks, Sherry.
What about you, Jeff? I can't find you.
I think I might have muted Jeff before. He was making a lot of noise.
Oh, he
I
was
don't know
the
if you know how
noisy
to,
one.
He was. I don't know if you know how to unmute yourself, Jeff.
I'm
There you go.
Molly and Sherry say that about me a lot. I make a lot of noise. No, I already said it. I'll say it one more time. We can't do this without the help of all of you. So thank you so much for dedicating 2 hours of your day. And we will be staying in close touch with you and asking you to stay with us. And when you're available to help, we're definitely going to need it. So we look forward to working with you. And thanks everybody. I guess I'll see a bunch of you, and Molly and Sherry and I will see a bunch of you down in Wilmington, Delaware here at the end of the week at the Big Delaware River Conference. So with that, unless there's anything else, Sherry, we can just everybody can hit the red button. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.